Trump originally was a huge skeptic of crypto, and he said that it was, a nest of fraud and corruption, and it wasn't real. Well, that apparently became a big attraction for him, and he decided that he would be all over crypto. Now they've got their own crypto business, World Liberty Financial. They have dropped 13 different SEC investigations against different crypto fraudsters. One of them, Justin Sun, was at that crypto dinner as one of the lead donors to the new crypto meme coin, which is basically like the Trump Hotel. It's a channel through which people can put untold millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into Donald Trump's pockets, whether it's for a pardon or for the dropping of an SEC investigation or what have you. The kind of corruption we're seeing right now, Michael, is so spectacular. It is unlike anything that has ever been seen before in American history. It makes Watergate look like a Cub Scout picnic.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the Midas Touch Network. Super quick intro today because I'm still in Ukraine and we just had another air raid alert. I'm actually in the bunker right now, but we don't skip days here at the Ken Harbaugh Show. So I wanted to share part of this fantastic interview I had with Ruth Ben-Ghiat right before I left the U.S. She nails it on the corruption of Donald Trump and what it really means. Thanks. Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. My guest today is Ruth Ben-Ghiat, a history professor and political commentator, and one of the keenest observers I know when it comes to calling out autocratic tendencies in our politics. She's also the author of Strong Men, Mussolini to the Present. Ruth, it's great to have you back.
Delighted to be here.
In our last conversation, it was a while ago and a lot has happened since, but we covered a lot of the waterfront when it comes to indicators of emerging autocracy. We talked about cults of personality, the use of state power against political opponents, and the deployment of irregular forces like Mussolini's black shirts or Trump's Proud Boys. But we didn't talk about how corruption is central to the governance mode of a strongman. Can you talk about why that is?
Yeah, I actually added a corruption chapter to my book when I was doing the research, and I had chapters on propaganda and violence and the leader cult, the things that one normally thinks about. And then I realized that corruption was absolutely central to not just how they operate, but how they think. So when we think about authoritarianism, the political definition is, when the executive branch expands and tries to take over and neutralize the judiciary, the civil service, all of that. And we are living through that attempt right now, that process in America. But there's another definition I found from doing this research. It's when you take away the rights of the many, and that's like voting rights, reproductive rights, but also the right to a fair workplace, that kind of thing. And you give the very few, the leader, his cronies, the billionaires, unheard of privileges to do whatever they'd like to do and make as much money as they can make. And so fewer rights for the many and more freedoms for the few to plunder. And what I mean by this is you deregulate, you privatize, you take away workplace rights and regulations and safety. You take away, you deregulate against excess corporate profits. You allow bad actors to operate without having to declare themselves. So the Trump administration has, partly repealed the use of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. And so these elites can plunder the workplace, female bodies, and make more corporate and individual profits than they ever thought possible.
One of the safeguards against that kind of thing used to be sunlight, used to be the fourth estate, right? But there is just such a flood of this kind of corruption that it's become normalized. And you kind of have to hand it to Donald Trump in that maybe his singular political innovation has been grifting out in the open and making it so normal that we just saw this headline today, a $300 million purchase of Trump coin by a Chinese company affiliated with TikTok is not a headline. I mean, when corruption is that normal, you get away with it so easily.
That's certainly his particular brand. Other leaders are not that brazen. They hide it, and the way they hide it, and this is a continuity for, it's very sad, for 100 years. The most dangerous job to have under authoritarianism is not only a journalist, but an anti-corruption researcher. From Mussolini, who killed off the head of the political opposition, but who was an anti-corruption researcher who was going to expose him taking bribes from a U.S. oil company. That was back in 1924, up to Alexei Navalny and his mentor Boris Nemtsov in Russia. They were not just opposition politicians, they were anti-corruption researchers. Because the whole system of authoritarianism, which depends on being able to hide your criminal activities, cannot abide and cannot tolerate people who want the light of day. Now, Trump is a little different in that he's always been, as a businessman onward, very brazen about what he's doing. And that's how he's come to attention for many decades. Decades ago, Adam Schiff, mused publicly that there was a lot of speculation that Trump's real estate empire was, one of the purposes of it was to money launder for Russians. They would buy his real estate as a way of money laundering. This was speculated years and years ago. So he's always been like this, and he's importing this mode of doing business into politics in America.
Hey, it's Ken Harbaugh. Huge shout out to everyone who has supported this show via our Patreon page. If you want to weigh in with questions for upcoming guests or give us feedback on past guests or make sure you never miss an episode, click the link below. It's free to sign up. And if you're able to pitch in a few bucks a month, just know that we put every dollar back into the show. We do have another reporting trip to Ukraine coming up. Thanks for the help. What do you think it will take then to break through, to make these stories about corruption have some salience politically? I mean, if the Russian non-voting public is more attuned to the corruption exposed by people like Navalny than we are, what hope do we have?
I think that corruption costs money and it wrecks states. And a lot of these states are actually failed states. Like Russia is pretty much a failed state and depends on China to prop up its economy. Now, this has been going on for decades in Russia, which is officially a kleptocracy. And that is when it's literally ruled by thieves. And so the corruption becomes systemic. And then the effects on everyday life appear, where the state doesn't deliver benefits anymore to people, and there's mass poverty. Now we have this very concentrated effort right now to wreck what's called good governance, to wreck federal agencies. And here we also have the challenge of Elon Musk, who is like an unelected co-leader who's been allowed to, with his Department of Government Efficiency, to go in and re-engineer government to protect his own businesses and promote and make monopolies for his own profits, like he's trying to do in the space sector. For SpaceX. That is also a form of corruption. And so what we have now is Trump has partnered with Musk, and each of them are kind of using their offices, whether it's elected or unelected, to rip off the American public. And I think that journalism is playing a very, very important role right now. And ordinary Americans, even those maybe their eyes are not opened now, but we're only 3 months in, the effects of this over time will not be pleasing to Americans who, often have a sense of decency, even whoever they may vote for. And when this becomes apparent, you see even GOP leaders are reacting against the gift of a jet from Qatar. It's too much. It's gone too far, they're saying, and so we'll see what happens. But I am not I'm not without optimism on this front.
That was part one of my conversation with Ruth Ben-Ghiat. I will post part two as soon as I can. Thanks.